Many times I was in medical conferences and seminars where they were teaching that when the sympathetic system is on, the parasympathetic system is off, which is completely and utterly wrong. I studied anatomy and physiology very deeply for many, many years. I did 5 cadaver dissections to really learn the anatomy firsthand. If you take your hands and put them together like this, I will teach you how your autonomic nervous system works. Right now in the middle, we're in balance, parasympathetic, sympathetic balance. Remember, parasympathetic is the digest, metabolize, assimilate, growth, repair, and learning branch. The sympathetic is the fight, flight, energy expenditure, nutrient use. It's the utilization branch. It expresses and expends energy and resources. Parasympathetic accumulates energy and resources. So when you're in balance, you're right in the middle. But if you go outside for a jog with your dog, let's say, the activity, if the right hand, we'll call the right hand, the masculine hand, sympathetic, as the activity begins to come on, you begin to require more oxygen to feed the muscles in the body. The body begins to pump blood to the periphery to feed the muscles, and the sympathetic system represses the parasympathetic system. The harder you exercise, the more it represses the parasympathetic because it needs more blood and oxygen to maintain that level of activity. If you're in a marathon and you slow down to stop for a banana and a drink, then once you drink water and eat a banana, the parasympathetic system is now coming back on because it has to take some energy to digest the banana, so it's pushing back the sympathetic system. Some of you will know this firsthand if you've ever tried to go to the gym and lift weights too soon after a meal. You feel weak. It's very hard to really exert effort because the parasympathetic system is trying to digest, metabolize, assimilate, and eliminate. And if your body's hungry, it says, hey, it's more important to get some energy and resources in you than it is to spend them. So now you have a battle between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. But we must remember that the brain and nervous system can't tell the difference between a perceived threat, an imagined threat, and a real threat, a perceived, imagined, or real stressor. So unfortunately, most people are so busy stressing themselves out and fearing themselves to death that their sympathetic system is always in a fight or flight state, constantly repressing the parasympathetic system. And so people can end up eating a lot of food but can't digest it, and that opens the door wide for fungal and parasite infections. Athletes that are too sympathetic don't ever get into recovery mode, which is over here, because they're constantly got the gas pedal on. People that drink too much stimulants, caffeine and otherwise, keep the sympathetic system wound up, so they can't bring themselves back. But a meditative practice or a Tai Chi or a Qigong or a work-in practice is designed to bring you over into the parasympathetic system while being physically active at a low level of intensity, so that your heart rate does not elevate, your breathing rate does not elevate, your tongue does not dry out, and you can comfortably do it on a full stomach. That's what I developed as work-in practices, so that people that need movement could actually do inner work practices that would take them into meditation states, calm their mind, calm their body, and recharge their body with life force energy. So there's an example of how you can get a dynamic meditation, but if you work harder than you can work without elevating your heart rate or your breathing rate, for example, to the degree your heart rate and breathing rate goes up, the sympathetic system is coming on and pushing the parasympathetic system down, which pushes you into your left brain, which stops you from being able to reflect in your wholeness. You will get caught in storylines as opposed to being able to perceive the whole of something or the connections of something. When you're sympathetically dominant, it's very hard to use intuition because the mind's always looking for a threat in the environment. So if we have become conditioned to be in high levels of stress chronically, we desensitize and are unaware of how stressed we actually are. I'll give you an example of that from my fighting career. I was a competitive boxer and kickboxer for 12 years. In our off season, we would not be sparring and, we would relax. We'd have a few months of off season. And I always remember the dread of going back into training because we would have to start sparring again and punches would really hurt. Someone punched you in the face or the head, it would hurt. But after about 3 weeks of boxing every day, that same punch didn't hurt at all. It was just like a thud. And so I used to go through the experience of desensitizing, because as you expose to more and more pain, your nervous system down-regulates the pain threshold. And I've had to deal with this with many endurance athletes in my career as a therapist, because they so down-regulate their pain threshold that they are no longer conscious of when they are damaging things like Achilles tendons or developing plantar fasciitis or many other things like rotator cuff injuries and knee injuries and back injuries. The pain that almost anybody else would have found quite uncomfortable and sent them to a doctor, they just ignore. So if we stay too wound up from life because we're not taking time to be centered in ourselves and to reflect and to be with ourselves, then our threshold for stimulus stays so high that we can't perceive the subtle messages of the soul or the instincts or spirit. And then you become somebody that thinks someone like Paul Chek that talks to rocks and trees and plants and souls on the other side is a weirdo. So what you have is the numbest, dumbest people in the world, metaphorically, criticizing those that are demonstrating what's possible, which is the story of the life of many mystics being killed by the sterile and the stupid. So as we become desensitized to stress, elevated sympathetic tone causes body armoring. There are 6 primary forms of stress in the human being: physical stressors, chemical stressors, electromagnetic stressors, psychic, nutritional, and thermal, and they all summate, they all add. The body does not differentiate one type of stress. Your physiological and psychological response is a response to the sum total of stress from all inputs at any given time. So depending on your unique genetics, ancestral influences, trauma history, disposition, unique soul influences, given pathways of facilitation result in disease in key body systems or associate regions. So depending on what kind of past injury history you have, what kind of genetics you have, and your psychological profile, the stress will ultimately manifest in the bone body, the muscle body, the nerve body, the circulatory body, lymphatic body, fascial body, organ and gland body, or it will simultaneously manifest in the astral body as emotional and mental imbalances. So we can easily, telling ourselves lies will disrupt us here and here, which will trickle to here. A lot of people's chronic illnesses, diseases, and neurosis are the symptoms in the body of falsities in the mental, emotional aspects of themselves manifesting in the physical. Stillness practices enhance our awareness of what we're creating within ourselves so we can choose to implement optimal balancing and healing practices and avoid illness, injury, disease, and mental emotional degradation and dysregulation. So using a consciously managed workout stressor can bring us into sympathetic awareness, and we can then intentionally unwind ourselves to prepare for stillness practices. So I talked earlier about body armoring. When I work with people, quite commonly, it's very common with neck and head problems. When I go to work on the muscles, they can't relax. So I go to touch their muscles and it's like they're tight all the time. Well, you can't massage a muscle that's under contraction like that. It won't do anything. So I have to say to the person, please relax your neck. And they often say, I am. But they have no idea that they're so armored from all this internalized stress that their whole body's reacting like it's in a battlefield in the middle of a war, and they don't even know it. I can tell you all the negative consequences that brings, but there's many. So paradoxically, what I have to do is I have to have them push against my hand, like sideways or backwards with their head, and I'll just have them bring up to a good strong contraction. I'll hold that for 5 seconds, and then I'll say, relax. And now the muscles will relax because I've changed the threshold of stimulus. By bringing them up to a high amount of stimulus above the threshold, they're now aware that they can reduce by letting go of the pressure on my hand. And then they become often for the first time aware that they've been tightening their neck muscles the whole time and didn't even know it. The point I'm making is we can use a workout stressor to pressurize the system to a supra threshold level. Like when you're doing a set of biceps curls until you can't bend your arms anymore, you know for sure when you put those weights down, you're relaxing. So we can use a contrast therapy or a contrasting approach to trigger a relaxation within ourselves. So depending on how stressed or wound up you are, it's best to choose an inner work practice that can be performed at workout intensity. Such practices allow you to meet yourself where you're at. The example I give as a mechanic is that if a bolt, such as a cylinder head bolt, is tightened to 110 foot-pounds of torque, it will take at least 111 foot-pounds of torque in the opposite direction to unwind it. So here's your 110 foot-pounds of torque as a metaphor here. A single mother who's got many hats to wear and is all wound out and stressed out. And I've worked with many, many of them. They come to me very sick and burned out. Nurses are a common example. So when we look at the Tai Chi ruler, for example, we can begin with a period of dynamic movement, such as the Tai Chi ruler, or any zone exercise or body weight exercise, such as push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, etc., to move the inner stress and tension into movement until ready to calm into a stillness-based practice, which can be very helpful. So in the Tai Chi ruler practice, which is a dynamic circular movement, you're supposed to go 1 revolution per breath. Inhale for the top half. As it passes your nose, you begin the exhalation cycle. As it reaches the horizontal and your arms are outstretched, you begin the inhalation cycle. So it's done 1 breath per cycle to take you into a deep meditation and harmonize your brain, your heart, and your guts so that you're in a state of biological coherence. But if somebody's wound up, I tell them, do it as fast and as deep as you want. In other words, bend your legs, make as big a circle as you can. And so I tell my patients and students, go as fast as you need to go to outgas. And some of them will look like they're reeling in a whale with a fishing pole for about 10 minutes. They'll have so much stress in them there. And I say, just let your body calm into the movement. And so as they get tired and there's a craving for calm and a craving for less tension and less outgassing, then they drop in beautifully and often have very deep and profound meditative experiences while moving the body. So for example, if it's your time to meditate or do your inner work, but you feel all wound up, you'll sit there and try to meditate. Your mind will be running around like a dog chasing cars everywhere. You'll get up after 20 minutes or half an hour and you'll just feel frustrated, like you just wasted 20 minutes of your day. But if you get on the floor and bang out 100 push-ups and then flip over and do 100 sit-ups, then do jumping jacks as fast and hard as you can until you're exhausted and then sit down, now you'll have unwound that cylinder bolt enough that you can go in because the body wants it. And the mind is probably going to want it too.